Hey everyone, it's Kelly from Silly Moon Quilting Co. I hope you're doing well today. You'll notice that I'm in a little different location today, and that is because my studio is being moved. My filming studio is being moved to a different location in my house. So I thought I would use this area, which is where I sometimes sew, to just kind of do a quick video. I know we're getting ready to be working on Christmas projects, so let's show you a couple different ideas on how to get some of those Christmas projects quilted. And you can use this either on a table runner or a pillow, an overall design. It's super fast and easy. So I'm going to show you how to make 3 sizes of trees, kind of modern trees. They're not going to have defined branches, but modern type trees, and a star and a double star. I've done the star before, and some of you may already know Twinkle or Star Ruler, but I wanted to show you this all in one video so you have your potential holiday quick quilting ideas all in one video. So, okay, here we go. So today we're going to be talking about the Wedgie set. I've done a full video on the Wedgie set where we talk about what all of this is and how to use the engraved marking. So if you haven't seen that, go ahead and take a look at that. So that will explain, much like our drop set, if you used it where you've got the triangle and then you're rotating it so that the stitch line is underneath here to create that consistency in a full 360-degree circle without having to mark your quilt. Okay, so let's start with the biggest one. So Wedgie 3 is our largest of these 2 rulers, and I'm going to do a Christmas tree, super quick and easy. As always, we've got our machine set up, so we've got our feed dogs down. We've got our ruler foot on our machine, really important to make sure you've got that ruler foot. I've got my sticky tape that comes with my rulers on my ruler on my Wedgie 3. And I do have my Supreme slider on today, not always necessary for a small project like this, but if you have one, it's always a good idea to put it on when you're ruler quilting. So I'm also using my gloves, and everyone knows my super fancy gloves, but you can use whatever quilting gloves you have, and those will work just fine. So I'm starting with using Wedgie, or Wedgie 3, and I'm going to be using it what I would call upside down. So this is going to be the base of our tree. This is going to be the top of our tree. So I'm going to put it on here on the quilt, or quilt sandwich. I'm using a nice bright red thread just so that you can see what I'm doing easily. And as you know, if you've taken classes from me, you know that I show you how to bring up your thread if you're stitching a table runner or such. I'm not going to do that today. I'm just going to do a couple locking stitches. But I do want to talk just a little bit about the ruler itself. So if you look here, we've got a line that goes across. I'm going to just zoom in that for a sec so you can see. So I've got a line here that goes across the ruler. That line is the center of this triangle. So if I were to stitch only this triangle, then I would end up with a straight line across, or that would be my center line. So if I had a seam that I wanted this centered about, I could do that. Remember though, with this design, we're going to be doing a trunk on our tree. So this is no longer the actual center. So however long you're deciding to do your trunk, you have to adjust this by that amount on your center if you want your tree centered on a table runner. Just a little bit of information there for you. So I'm going to bring my ruler, because we want to create a trunk, I want to bring my ruler so that, or my ruler foot rather, is right in line with that center part of the wedgie. So there's my center line. I want that to be in line with the edge of my ruler foot. That's going to give me a 1/4 inch gap on this side and a 1/4 inch gap on that side so that I can make sure that I've got room to do my trunk and it stays continuous and open. So then all I'm going to do is a couple quick locking stitches, and again, you can go ahead and pull your thread up at this point It will make things look just a little bit neater for you. And it'll make the back look nice. I'm holding down to my ruler here, and I'm just going to start stitching this way. When I reach this corner of Wedgie, I'm going to take a slight pause, and that slight pause is going to allow me to get a nice sharp corner. I'm pausing longer just for effect here, and I'll show you when I come around this way. That will give me a nice sharp corner, so I will often even take an extra stitch in that corner, and that just means that I end up with a nice sharp point, you can see there. And I'm going to reach the point where my hands are way down here, so they're out of comfort zone for me to be holding the ruler. So my hands are way down here. I'm going to shift my hands up that ruler so that I can get a better grip, stitch right to the top, take that extra stitch again, and then I'm going to stop and shift my hands. This is why we want to make sure we have needle down position engaged. If we haven't, take that pause in that corner and then stitch over to where the edge of that ruler foot is in line again with this marking line. So I'm going to pull my ruler out. On my domestic machine, I'm lifting my ruler foot and sliding it under with my needle still down. On my long arm, I would have my shank here that I would just lift the ruler up and slide it over the shank. So now what I want to do is I am going to stitch down half an inch or an inch, and I'm going to do that using my markings on my ruler. So you can see here I've got each of my marking lines here is a 1/4 inch away from the line beside it. So from this line to this line's a 1/4 inch, this line to this line's a 1/4 inch. So I'm going to use this straight line and I'm going to put it on top of my stitch line. That way I know I'm square coming down. And I'm going to stitch to the second line, and then I'm going to slide my ruler down and stitch again. And then I'm going to turn my ruler to the side, and I'm going to put my line here in line with my needle. And then I'm going to stitch over to the first line. So I've moved over half an inch. So a 1/4 inch, a 1/4 inch, half an inch. Then I'm going to turn my ruler back around, and I'm going to line up this line here again on my seam so I know I'm coming back up straight. And that's going to bring me back to where I started. And there we go. So we've got our first little tree with Wedgie. So that's the first size. Now all of the wedgies, you can just smile when you say that, all of the wedgies are different sizes. So the next size is Wedgie 2, and we're going to use Wedgie 2 exactly the same way to create a tree beside it. Now if you're doing a line of trees and you want to make sure that the bottom of your tree here, the base of the tree, no, this part of the tree, you want to make sure this part of the tree lines up all the way across your quilt. It's easy to do that with the markings that are on Wedgie. I'm going to lift my foot again. Always make sure that your hand is out of or your needle is not going to scratch your ruler when you do this. Put your ruler foot down in the middle of your ruler and then move your ruler to where you need it to be. Otherwise, you could end up bringing the ruler foot down on top of the ruler and scratching it or chipping it, and actually even throwing out the timing of your machine. I apologize, I've got a bit of a cold today. So I want to, you see these 3 lines that are here. If I use that center line on the line I just stitched from the previous tree, my needle is going to end up right here, and I'm going to be able to stitch straight across, and these 2 trees will now be in alignment. So I'm going to come down and start it exactly the same way. So I'm putting the edge of my ruler foot in line with that seam, or in line with that marking line on my ruler. You would bring your thread up here, pause in that corner, stop if you have to and adjust your hands. pause in the corner, and then back over. And then I'm going to lift my ruler, and I am going to do exactly the same thing that I just did. I find with these two trees, it's just fine to make the trunks the same size. And stop there, move down a little bit more. And you'll notice on Wedgie, I'll show you in 1 second, that we have 2 line markings on both ends, and that's to be able to adjust where you put the wedgie. If you use this end when you're lining up here, it just makes it a little bit easier for you to be able to have a little more to hold on to. The last one I did, I used this end. You just have to be a little bit more careful because that last line is right on that round, so be cautious of that. And then I'm going to turn this around and go ahead and go back up again and end where I started, a couple locking stitches, and there we go. Now we have 2 modern trees. And then we'll do the third one, which is the little baby one, or Wedgie 1. So here's Wedgie 1. And we do this exactly the same. If you do the trunk the same, I find it's a little bit heavy. This one is quite tiny. I'm not sure that I would use this one a lot just because it is quite tiny. But I'm going to bring it over here so that you can see how we do it. So same principle. So I'm lining up the edge of my ruler foot again with here, and this is going to create the same width of trunk, which you may or may not want. You may decide that you want to make this trunk a little bit smaller. But I'm going to show you for lining up purposes that we do it exactly the same with all 3. I'm using that line to line up on there. I'm going to stitch down, and I'll do it again, move it over and do the same thing again. And then stitch over to there, and then stitch back up to the top. So you'll see when I take this off, it does make a bit of a large tree trunk, and I think if I were to do this on a quilt, I might make that a little smaller. I showed you this just to show you how I would do all 3 of them the same. So you can adjust and play with that. And I'm going to go back here and show you now what I mean about that center marking that I talked about at the beginning. If you look here at Wedgie 3, you'll see that that center line marking is the center of here. So from this distance of stitching to there and this distance to the top is the same. But what you do want to notice is that if you add this trunk, you've added half an inch or an inch length to your overall height from here to here. So what you want to do then is, if you're going to use that center marking along the center of a seam and you want this perfectly centered within your quilt, you need to adjust this line by 1/4 of an inch. So you need to move it up, or sorry, rather half an inch. You need to move it up half an inch. So you could do that just by putting a little piece of masking tape or washi tape half an inch up, and that would split that difference, and it would mean that the actual tree itself was centered about your center line on your quilt. I hope that makes sense. So another really cool design that I like to do on my Christmas quilts is my star design. And of course, our Twinkle set is also available in 3 sizes. So there's Twinkle A, B, and C. And those will allow you to create stars in 3 different shapes. And those stars will nest within themselves as well if you choose. Because it is a Christmas type video here to show you how to get those Christmas quilts quilted quickly. Say that 5 times fast. I'm going to show you how I use Twinkle B in this case. So Twinkle B, and this applies to all of our rulers, if you see this engraved line on here, that is what your stitch line is going to be. So wherever you want your star to be oriented, that's how you want to start your ruler. Okay, So I'm going to start here, and I'm going to start stitching it across. And there is a full tutorial on the Twinkle ruler, so I'm not going to get too involved in that. But I want to do this and then just have this on the same piece of fabric so you can see what your options are. And then you can also see how to make this into a double star. Turn it one more time. So every time I'm going around here, I'm lining up the stitched line here underneath my engraved line. So you can see here I've got my almost like a witch's hat there. I've got my ruler so that it's lined up so that all of that engraved line is over top of that stitch line. Down, and then I'm going to keep rotating my ruler. Same thing in behind. I'll show you when I pull this back out. And then you can see how this works so that they all line up all the way around. And that's how I'm going to end up with that perfect star with sharp points on the inside and on the outside. So can you see that? I'm just going to come over here and show you that. So the stitched line is underneath all of this, and that makes it so that I end up with that nice sharp star. But now we want to do a double star. So I've got my star here. I'm going to now use this center line in line with this peak, or valley rather, here on this end, in line with my needle. And I'm going to use the line above the hole. So the engraved line above the hole is going to go into the valley of these two. I hope that makes sense. Let's come in a little bit there and show you that a little clearer. So my engraved line is between the valley going this way and this way. Now I'm going to free motion stitch up to this point. You can use the ruler if you want, but I'm just as happy just doing this. Stitching go really slow so you're staying on the same line until I touch my ruler, and then I'm going to stitch towards me or away from me and then back towards me. And now we're going to be repeating exactly the same thing going around. So we've done our first stitch line. Now I'm going to be turning my ruler. I'm going to turn this just so you can see. Turning my ruler and switching from one side to the other so that this line is over top of that stitch line. And again, there's a full tutorial on the basics of Twinkle on our YouTube channel here. So go ahead and check that out. And I'm going to rotate one more time. And rotate one more time. So as I'm rotating, I'm always putting the stitch line underneath the line on the ruler. And then I'll do another one here. So when you come around, make sure that you're lining up with the correct marking line. Don't try to line up with this one. Make sure that you're lining up on the one that you have not completed yet. And then we will come back to where we started. And we have a perfect star. So super easy, super quick to do. All you're doing is following the line markings that are on the ruler. So I'm going to stop this, and then I'm going to take a photo of this to make it a little bit easier for you to see. And then you'll be able to see what the finished product is. So we've got our star. We've got two Christmas trees. So really, really easy ways to finish off that quilt that you're working on, or to just do those as a table runner would be really cool as well. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope that you are now inspired to start working on your Christmas projects, table runners, or placemats, or pillows for your front bench, whatever you choose to do with it. So an easy way to do 3 trees. Keep in mind, if you like the star, you can go ahead and make the star exactly the same way with 3 different sizes of our Twinkle A and Twinkle B and Twinkle C rulers. The one I used today was Twinkle B, so that's the middle size, and you can go ahead and change that to whatever size you want. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please give us the big thumbs up, and if you could subscribe down below. If you hit that notification bell, you'll know exactly when we've come up with a new design. Okay, thanks so much. Bye-bye.